Also, no event happens in this hall without the permission and cooperation and generosity of two young ladies, and they're at the back also, and Sonia and Andy. Would you please each stand? We are graced tonight with a message from Governor Scott, and I ask Mike Tuda to come forward and read that message.
Good evening. I'd like to thank you all for coming to the American Legion tonight. It is our honor to be having you with us this evening. We'd like to welcome everyone and our Gold Star families. Thank you very much for attending tonight. It means the world to us, and we thank everyone. We have a message this evening from our governor. Dear veterans and family members, I am sorry I cannot be with you this evening, but I wanted to express my sincere gratitude for your service and sacrifice. To all of those who have worn the uniform, thank you for the service you have provided to our nation. The dedication and commitment you have shown speaks volumes of your character and honor. Be assured your efforts are appreciated and will never be forgotten. To all of their families, thank you for your sacrifice and that you allowed your loved ones to serve. Behind every great soldier is a support network, and without your support, they would not have been able to complete their missions. I send my best wishes for an enjoyable evening and celebration, and thank you again for your service and sacrifice. Sincerely, Philip B. Scott, Honorable Governor of the state of Vermont. Thank you all.
We have a lot of heroes, American heroes who are Vermonters. One of them is on the front page of your program. Another is a young man who grew up in Franklin, Vermont, and he rose from E1 to a Chief Master Sergeant, Chief Command Master Sergeant. Brian Marchessault, who is here tonight, came down from Franklin to speak to us. Brian has served as a senior enlisted leader and advisor to the commander on all matters affecting combat operations with 2 air expeditionary groups and an expeditionary air support operations. He served in Operation Freedom, Sentinel, and NATO's Resolute Support. He also advises and assists with joint enterprise tasks and individual augmentee airmen in the Afghanistan Combat Joint Operations Area. Command Chief Marchessault spent the last 9 months in Afghanistan and was awarded the Bronze Star for his service. Brian, thank you for coming down.
You know, you look out in this audience tonight, and I feel like I'm standing on the shoulders of giants because of all the people, the service that you guys have done. Can you hear it? All right, not used to standing so close to the mic. Folks, I'll say that again. I feel like tonight I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, and I look at you and you're the giants. People who came before us and, basically all the great things, that so we can do what we do tonight and have we can break bread tonight with a great family. But I want to say thanks to Lieutenant Tom Costello. When he called me and he talked to me about coming down, what an honor for me. I got goosebumps tonight talking to you guys. The other one I want to say to the families we recognize tonight, I want to say thank you. The sacrifice, words can't say enough to you guys. I'm humbled and honored to be here. For all the vets, well, let me back up. When I came home, and my good friend, the Colonel, when he came home, we get celebrated really well. Some of you did not. What I want to say to you all tonight is, welcome home. You guys deserve a pat on the back for what you guys have done. What I want to talk to you tonight is a little bit about Afghanistan. What I saw in Afghanistan, I didn't expect what I was going to get into. I've always deployed with the F-16s. I've always gone with 300 airmen, been in the weeds. When I went over to Afghanistan, I was the first Guard Command Chief to be a numbered Air Force Command Chief, and I learned an immense. And I want to share that tonight with you. I had a dual-hatted mission. We talked about Operation Freedom Sentinel. Operation Freedom Sentinel is taking it to the bad guys, folks. That's a U.S. mission only. That is getting after the enemy. And I will tell you right now, sometimes you don't know who the enemy is over there. And I'll talk about that a little bit as well. But under that mission, we had the 455th Air Expeditionary Wing in Bagram, the 451st Air Expeditionary Group in Kandahar, the 438th Expeditionary in H-Qai, which is in Kabul, the 738th in Kandahar, the 817th Special Forces, and the 955th. Had no idea how much responsibility was about to be levied upon me. We had numerous FOBs, 101 AFSCs, which means there's 101 different jobs that are actually being accomplished over there by our airmen and soldiers. That's pretty amazing. When I say we took it to the enemy, I want to share with the combat capability on the part which we levied upon out there. We had tankers at Kandahar. We had E-11 Bacon. Let me talk about that aircraft just for a second. No matter where your soldiers, your Marines, Navy, Air Force, it didn't matter. It didn't matter where your troops on the ground are. You had a cell phone, you had a flip phone from the 80s. You could actually make a call. You could make a call and you were talking to somebody. So how does that affect, if you talk about the soldier on the ground with a gun, and they had troops in contact, they could call in F-16s. We had A-10s. We had pararescue on 2 different stations that stood tall for 24/7. The MQ-9 fleet, you talk about the MQ-9 fleet that was out there, it was 26% of the unmanned aircraft in the Air Force fleet was at Kandahar, all supporting the troops on the ground. At Bagram, we had F-16s, AC-130 gunships, C-130 transport, Special Forces. But what was all that for? And you want to know who the enemy is. Basically, they get their money from drugs. They get it from what they do, the poppy season when they grow it. They get to the point where they grow it in their meth labs. And how we took them out when the troops on the ground called for support. I'll explain to you a little bit how we actually did that. We call it the black cloud. If we sent out the troops on the ground and they were in a certain spot, what we could do is we could actually stack the airspace. We could put an MQ-9 overhead for 30 hours, just looking at the ground, tracking the people we want to track. We could put F-16s and based on a different orbit. We could put A-10s in a different orbit. We could put tankers up there, and we put E-11s. I will tell you right now, the troops that we have over there now are the safest they've ever been because of joint. The joint environment truly does work. We also had the F-16s and our combat capability. We had it on GCAS. We had it on ground close air support. So if somebody called, we could actually launch them and actually recover them quickly. We had aircraft airborne and CAS, close air support, all the time. CIVCAS, civilian casualties, were a huge deal over in Afghanistan. Every single one that if we dropped a bomb on under Operation Freedom Support, was investigated. You couldn't get it wrong. And I'm going to talk about in a minute about the Afghan Air Force and how much they were under the pressure. I will tell you right now, I'm going to give you an unclassified 2 words that you guys go home and look up tonight, and it would make you proud to be an American. It's Project Maven. I will tell you right now, Project Maven lives, and it's in Afghanistan right now. And if somebody wants to go look it up about artificial intelligence, it's absolutely amazing. Let's move on to the second mission. The second mission was Resolute Support. This is where it gets really, really complicated. It's a train, advise, and assist command. And what I was embedded with, and I was not prepared for, and you learn it really, really quick, we had 39 NATO partners and countries that we actually dealt with. They were, no kidding, in the train, advise, assist. So what does that mean? What we actually did is we were standing up the Afghan National Army, we were standing up an Afghan Air Force, and we're training them. your sons and daughters are out there training this army, and basically they're right next to the FOBs. It could be, let's say in Fenty, there was 40,000 Afghan National Army troops, and we're training them daily. It's dangerous work. I'm telling you right now, it's dangerous work, and we'll get into it a little bit more. But I want to share with you how many troops on the ground do we have in Afghanistan. Afghanistan's big. We had 15,000 uniformed members who are in this in Afghanistan right now. If you look at Bagram, at one time Bagram was huge. They have 20,000 empty beds. I want to put it in perspective. 20,000 empty beds now is how much we've shrunk the force in Afghanistan. You go down to Kandahar. Kandahar has 25,000 empty beds. So we're 15,000. So I'd ask you to reflect on that question. Can we do everything in Afghanistan that we need to do with 15,000 for a dual-hatted mission with 39 coalition partners? Here's what I'm going to tell you, folks. Something I learned really closely you don't hear on the news. How many contractors do you think we have in Afghanistan? We have 45,000 CLS, Contract Logistics Support, and I call them, they're your sons and daughters. So we hire intel analysts and we put them in the FOBs because we're only mandated for 15,000 and we're on a drawdown. What I would tell you is what I worried about, and some things I was losing sleep about is if we drew down and we said we were leaving Afghanistan today, we'll break the Air Force. I'm going to give you again, this is in my opinion, I'm giving you my opinion, because how do you get 45,000? And I'm going to show you a little map in a second of what the problems that we faced. When we coordinate and development the Afghan Air Force, so you say, well, what are you guys doing building an Afghan Air Force? Congressionally mandated that here's what we bought. We bought aircraft, a 208B, which is a huge Cessna, carries about 10 people. AC, which is a gunship, which is a 208, same aircraft, but it has guns on it. A-29 attack aircraft, C-130. We have U-860s, Black Hawks. We have MD-530. All open source. It would cost $8 billion to basically fund that and try to train them. What I would tell you, what we're doing though, is actually as we try to stand up this Afghan Air Force, is that 45,000 contract logistics support is actually trying to train them. And right now, we're doing it. But it's complicated. It is really, really complicated. Now remember, we're doing it with 15,000 people. Go down to Kandahar. All that combat capability, if you went to one active duty base, you're looking probably, 5,000, 6,000, maybe a little more. We're doing all the bases that I read off with 15,000. And E5, everybody knows what the E5 is. You take a staff sergeant. We had a staff sergeant in Kandahar. How many people do you think that staff sergeant was supervising on civilian side? 297. 297 people. I'll tell you, I tip my hat off. Please don't take this as negative. I tip my hat that we have E5s and we have airmen and soldiers that are actually out in the field that can take this mission on and do it. It's absolutely amazing what they're doing. So when they come back, thank them. Because here's the deal, they'll never tell you that story. They'll never tell you that story. We talked about a little bit about the ANA, Afghan National Army. That is very complicated. At Fenty and HKIA, we have huge bases that we're training them, and it gets into the checkpoint. I talk about checkpoints. If you look at Afghanistan, there's actually a huge circle. It's one highway that goes all the way around Afghanistan. Bill, can we put that picture of Afghanistan on there? So it's one highway, and there's 1,000 checkpoints on there, around there. And what we do is they actually do very, very small checkpoints. What we found out is a little bit of corruption, maybe a lot of corruption, is when people are using that highway, they're using that money and they're taking the money. The problem we had was Taliban was actually stopping the checkpoints from taking bribes, so the Taliban was looking good. So what we were training, it was a little bit of corruption. It's difficult, folks. If it was an easy answer, we would have fixed it. It is difficult. Are people over there doing their best? You bet. They're rocking it. What I wanted, can you guys hear me if I talk loud? Yeah. Okay. What I wanted to talk about a little bit is over here, that would be Herat base, air base. And what Herat was, it was run by the Germans. I'm sorry, that's run by the Italians. If you go up to Mazar-i Sharif, that is run by the Germans. And they all have a different way of running things. And you come down right below it, you have Bagram. Bagram is a U.S. Air Force base. Come down below it, just below Bagram, you have your Kabul. Next to Kabul, you'll have a ton of FOBs. All these FOBs is NKC. I'm going to talk about that in a minute, about a young lady who is, I'll tell you what, I'll take her to war any day with me. He says you'll have HKIA, which is the international airport where we train the special forces. Come down below, right there's Patika. Patika is, I was so proud of the airmen and soldiers that are actually serving there. Basically what they ran into is all around, and people saw us earlier, says, what do we have for extremist groups? The extremist groups, I would tell you, is we had Haqqani, we had ISIS, we had Taliban, and they all hate each other. I will tell you folks, we're not at war with Afghanistan, we're at war with a global war on terrorism. So the things that the U.S. is doing over there is absolutely amazing. But I will tell you right now, is that at nighttime, when I went down to the FOB, the first time I went to a FOB, I had never been to a FOB before. It's the size of a postage stamp. It is tiny. You can land a helicopter in it, and then you can get out. To see what all the branches, I don't want to say one branch, all the branches, what they were doing in these FOBs, over 30 FOBs, was phenomenal. They're mixing, they're going outside the wire, they're talking with the Afghan National Army, but you never know who the enemy was. So I commend them. Come down below, Kandahar. Kandahar is actually one of our big, massive bases. We have two really big bases for the Air Force. We have one for Bagram and Kandahar. Everything else is pretty much small, FOB, and they're doing a ton of work. What I also want to talk about is, now that I showed you the layout, how about state actors and non-state actors? Who is influencing what's going on in Afghanistan? Remember, I'm only going to give you a short period of time of what I'm seeing from my perspective. You know, Iran just did with the tankers, and they just had basically what they did to Saudi Arabia, and look where they are. They're to the west of us. If I used you for a map, and you look, you see Iran over here to the west. They don't like us. We can't fly over their country. Go to the north, you have Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan. We can't use their countries as well. Go to the northeast and you look at it, you have China and Russia. They have a huge influence in that country, but it says we can't fly in there. Come to the south and you got Pakistan. And the reason I want to come back to Pakistan was such an important thing is, do you guys remember when I was over there, an F-16 got shot down by India and Pakistan was blaming them? The only way that we can get resources in and out to our service members is through Pakistan. All the other countries have basically shut us down. We can't fly in and out. So we called it two things. We called it a G-lock and A-lock. Am I talking too fast, by the way? So the G-lock is a ground lock that we can actually bring stuff up, but however they do, they pulverize it. They steal it. However, we have an A-lock. And so that's basically a small corridor that we can fly up and out. So where do our supplies come from? This is really cool. From Qatar, our planes would take off, fly down through here, come up all the way up into Afghanistan. Immense amount of resources to get things up and in. Imagine when they shut that airspace down, how much we spent our time just working on airspace to get it back open, taking a trip to Pakistan and General Miller negotiating a deal. It was a huge deal. All this stuff is happening through this, and it's constantly, every day. You're not hearing it in the news. I want to go back to the non-state actors, how they're affecting us. I'm telling you, every day, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Taliban, Haqqani network, every single day, it was a different one. General Miller, who I'll tell you, I had the best senior leadership. Any command chief who went over there would have loved to work for that command. That leadership was amazing. General Miller was like, let's control the info space. He was all about having a public affairs team. The minute one of those radical terrorist group would put out a message, he would counter it with the facts. He basically leveled the field. It was amazing that people found out on CivCas, civilian casualties, wasn't us. Sometimes it was them, and they were blaming us. It was amazing. Influential factors, I started talking about that already. One of the big one was, how many of you guys remember Russia and Pakistan holding their own peace talks with the Taliban? How much do you think that threw a wrench into our plans over there? When you're looking at it from a 30,000-foot view, and you have Khalilzad, who's over there trying to do a peace negotiation, trying to settle that, and you have outside influences. And there was a ton of outside influence. So when you're actually looking at this, you're trying to take care of the soldiers, say, hey, go do your job, we got this. But this is going on the offset. The presidential elections. I get into Afghanistan, I hear there's going to be this great presidential election. It's going to be done. Says Ghani's running for re-election. They have it. It gets slipped. It gets slipped to April. Then it gets slipped to June. And it was slipped again to, I think it just happened. But what does that do? We have mod advisors. We have Minister of Defense who are fully trained, fully in the language of Dari. They know the language. They're down there every single day. It's in the green zone by the embassy. They have a huge, dangerous job. They're trying to teach them how to do the polling stations. They're trying to teach them how to put the flyers out, how to vote, and who to vote for. Basically giving the knowledge out. Not swaying it, but just teaching the democracy way. I will tell you, 2 years ago, what I worried about was when I found out in that same building that we were working on, the mod advisor team that was supposed to be completely safe, 13 of them died. Basically, when we say green on green or green on blue, that happens. And I tell you right now, what I lost sleeping, I probably got a lot of gray hair from over there, is every time someone went outside the wire, I worried about them. It was a big deal. The thing I'm not talking about is IDS. I'm not talking about indirect fire. I'm talking about things that are going on day to day that you look as a senior leader, what are you going to worry about? Our soldiers are doing it, and they're knocking it out of the park. The other one for influential factors. Maybe I'm a naive kid from Franklin, Vermont. I didn't realize what Ramadan was. I found out very quickly what Ramadan is. Don't be walking outside. Do not be eating. Do not be drinking. Do not be chewing gum. And then you worry about 15,000 plus another 45,000 contract with just support. Don't be doing this, because I'm gonna tell you right now, that will set us back so far you have no idea. Ramadan is it's not a very short one. It's actually quite long. It starts May 5 to June 3rd. Tom, how am I doing on time? Am I okay? Key leader engagements. We have a ton of key leader engagements. Basically, General Ramatulu weekly from ANA, Afghan National Army. General Shive. We have the President of Afghanistan that we met with all the time, President Ghani. Khalilzad. They all play a huge factor in taking up the time of what's going to happen. I didn't realize either that the 27th April was the April start of the fighting season.
I'm sorry, but it's one more season than mud season, and I hear you.
I'm telling you, they keep coming, because this was a huge learning lesson. And remember, I was there for a short period of time, because what it is, when you change over, the next person is going to be learning the same thing. 29 April, the Loyal Jirga. Loyal Jirga is basically it's tribal. All the tribes in the country come into Kabul, and they have this huge 2-week event. It goes on for everything. All the roads go black. You're not traveling. You're not outside the wire. The road movements outside the wire were amazing, and I'm gonna finish with one of the road movements. FML, they dreaded FML, the force management level. When we hear that they came out of the news and said, hey, we're going to take it from 15,000 down to 8,700, how do you think we're going to do that? We have all those bases that I just showed to you. So now what we're going to do is the problems we had is I got to cut that down to 8,700. I say it was a team.